How does the Secure Act affect your retirement? All right, we're going to talk about topics that affect your retirement according to the Secure Act. So people are like, I don't understand what the Secure Act. Well, let me explain. The Secure Act was passed December 19th, 2019 by Congress and signed into law by the president at the time, December 20th, 2019. And it went into effect the following January. What does the Secure Act, what's it stand for? It's an acronym, of course, and I have to read this because it's hard to remember what the Secure Act stands for, but it's the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act of 2019. So that's why it's a lot easier to say the Secure Act. But you need to understand it and how it affects your retirement, because a lot of people don't know how that has affected your upcoming or current retirement, whether you're close to or in retirement. So we're going to talk about a few tips today, just really 3 parts to that. There's a lot of parts to the Secure Act I feel that just really isn't relevant for majority of the people. We're not going to talk about all the little things, but the 3 big parts that could affect about 99% of the people watching who have IRAs, retirement accounts in retirement. So let's talk about these 3 tips about the Secure Act, the 3 things that I think will affect the majority of people watching this. And the first one comes down to contributions. So this one in effect January 1st of 2020, so we're over a few years ago now, is in the past, if you have an IRA, you cannot contribute to an IRA past the age 70 and a half, because that was the required minimum distribution age, 70 and a half. So it doesn't matter if you worked till 75, you had to stop making contributions at 70 and a half. But the new rules state you can contribute at any age now, as long as you have income to contribute, you can make contributions. So that's one of the improvements. And there's a lot of people who want to work longer than they used to, or they have to, or they want to pick up a part-time job and still contribute to their retirement accounts. So that's a big change, number one. The second one is the big change of RMDs. Required minimum distributions had to come out the year you turned 70 and a half. Now they postponed it to the age of 72. So let's just say it was the year you turned 70 and a half. So in the past, if you turned 70, say in September, but you weren't 70 and a half till the following year, that was the year you had to take your RMDs out by December 31st. Now the rule is, if you're turning 72 anytime this year, you have to take your RMDs out by December 31st. With one exception to the rule is you can actually postpone your first RMD till April 1st of next year, but then next year you have to take out 2 RMDs. So just get in the habit of taking them out yearly. And remember, on a previous episode, we talked about this. If you don't take out your RMDs by the time you're supposed to, the IRS will penalize you 50% of what you're supposed to take out. So let's pretend everybody watching this has $1 million IRA, right? And if you're 72 this year and you don't take out your RMDs, well, next year you have that means you're supposed to take out 3.65% of that balance. So roughly $36,500 is what you have to withdraw, pay taxes on that money, because you never pay taxes on it. If you miss taking out your RMDs, your penalty is half of that. So that's $18,250 penalty for missing your RMD. So the new rule is 72. A lot of people ask, can I postpone every year's RMD till April 1st? No, it's just the first one. You get the opportunity to postpone your first one till April 1st. You don't get to do every year's till April 1st. So make sure you're on top of your RMDs, and based off a previous episode as well, if you have different type of retirement accounts, you can't treat them the same. 401ks have to be treated separately. You have to take an RMD from each 401k. IRAs, you can do them cumulatively. You can take your RMDs from one IRA for all your IRAs if you choose to, but employer-sponsored plans are not treated the same. And we're going to talk about the third tip here. We're going to go a little in depth on this third tip, which is inheriting IRAs. So the big change with the Secure Act had changed how you can inherit IRAs. In the past, you could stretch an IRA. So if I inherited like my parents' IRA, I could stretch that out over my lifetime, which means just take a small required minimum distribution each year, but I can let that money grow. I don't have to take it out in a lump sum or any of that. So there's some changes to that that happened with the Secure Act. So nothing really changes if you're a spouse. So if you inherit your spouse's IRA, you treat that IRA as your own. So that's not the big deal. So even if your spouse is, difference in age, you treat it as your own. The big part here is if you lose a family member or a friend or whoever that is, you have to make sure if they're 72 or older, they take out their RMD for the year. So a lot of things happen if they pass away in the early part of the year. They probably did not take out their RMD for that year. And so before any of that money gets transferred, you got to make sure those RMDs are met before they get transferred to the beneficiaries. So again, if you're a spouse inheriting an IRA, you just put it in your own name, treat it as your own. And then, if you're 65 or whatever that age might be, you don't have to take RMDs till 72. The second part to this inheriting IRAs is, what if you're a non-spouse inheriting an IRA, but you're less than 10 years age difference? Maybe it's a brother or a cousin or sister or a friend, but you're less than 10 years difference. Now you're under the old rules where you could stretch it out over your lifetime, okay? But the interesting part is, we're going to put these tables on here to show you, is the RMD that you're required to take out as a beneficiary IRA, inherited IRA, is going to be different than the standard tables if it was your own IRA. So for example, let's just say if you have your own IRA and you're 72 years old, I mentioned you have to take out 3.65% of that balance. They look at December 31st balance of the previous year. But now let's say somebody was 80 years old, passes on, you're 72, you inherit their IRA, you're within 10 years, now you have to take out a different RMD table based off of where you are age-wise. And if you're 72 on the inherited table, you have to take out 5.81%. So, 2.3% roughly more, 2.25% more than what your own. So they're more aggressive and bigger withdrawals on the inherited tables than they are on the standard RMD tables. So something to be aware of. So that's if you are less than 10 years difference. So the last part here is the rule to these inherited IRAs is something that's never been used before or implemented before until this rule change. And that's if you are more than 10 years difference in age from the person who had passed, the owner of the IRA who had passed. So this was going to fall in the category of a lot of children, sons, daughters, maybe grandchildren even, of somebody who had passed. And you're more than 10 years difference. Now you have a 10-year window to get all that money out. And the rule states that money has to be withdrawn by December 31st, 10 years after the date of death. So if somebody passed away, just say, February 1st of 2022, and you're more than 10 years difference, that money has to be all withdrawn by December 31st of 2032. If not, there's penalties. And remember, these could be stiff penalties, 50% penalties. And so the difference of this last category of inherited IRAs is you're not forced to take withdrawals out each year in this category. You just have to have it withdrawn totally by that date. And so here's a problem I believe this is going to happen is, let's just say you have a couple children, they each get $250,000 each. And they don't understand the rules and they just think they can let that money grow, or they work with an advisor who doesn't understand the rules. And now it's 10 years later and that money is now $500,000. Okay, it doubled. Now they each have an IRA balance of $500,000, and if they didn't take any money out, what is the penalty? 50% of what they're supposed to take out. That's a big penalty. So you want to be in that category, consistently taking out some money each year, so that 10th year you don't have a huge withdrawal, because that could really affect their taxes. What if you have $100,000 or $200,000 withdrawal that last year? It could be very expensive because it's income that's on top of the income they're already earning through their jobs, most likely. So you have to be very careful with that. Get in the habit of taking out money each year, even though they don't require you to. And you also want to be working with somebody who understands these rules. A lot of information on the inherited IRAs. If you have questions, concerns, write some comments on that. And thank you for hitting that like and subscribe. And we're going to get you some more information on what's coming with the Secure Act. They're calling it the Secure Act 2.0. We're going to talk about that next week, changes that could be coming to the Secure Act.